Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to show you how to access your CasaOS Docker containers on the internet without a domain name and without any port forwarding. But first, a quick message from today's video sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Linode, the largest independent cloud computing provider. If you don't want to, or can't for whatever reason, self-host applications the way we talk about on this channel, Linode provides virtual servers that make it easy and affordable for you to host anything in the cloud. You can set up any of the applications that they have available in their marketplace with just a few clicks, or you can set up your own Docker VPS and install basically whatever you'd like in a Docker container. They have load balancers and firewalls available to help keep your apps online and safe. If you run into any trouble getting set up, Linode comes with amazing 24/7 customer support by phone or ticket, along with hundreds of guides and tutorials to help you get started. Sign up today at linode.com/dbtech and get a $100 60-day credit on your new Linode account. Links are in the description. So in our last CasaOS video, I showed how to install Nginx Proxy Manager to access your domains from the internet when you're away or you want to give access to somebody else or something along those lines. Now, there are reasons that somebody may not want to attach their containers to a domain name, whether it's for security reasons or maybe they can't because of their ISP. Maybe they don't have the option to port forward. There's a number of reasons why using a domain name and port forwarding isn't an option for everybody. So in this video, what I want to show you how to do is set up a software-defined local area network, or SD-LAN, using a third-party service called ZeroTier. Now, I know that the idea of using a third-party service will trigger some people, will upset some people, because we're using a third-party service that's not self-hosted. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how this sort of thing has to work from time to time when you have to have certain things in place where you can't use port forwarding or whatever the case is. Sometimes it's just easier and more efficient, really, to bring in a third party. I've actually been using ZeroTier for quite a while. In fact, I've made a couple of videos about them in the past on different platforms and different setups, and I trust them. I've been using them for a while. I actually use them when I travel to access my media server at home, and I've never had any issues with latency or anything like that when trying to access my home network from away. So with all of that being said, let's jump over to my desktop and take a look at ZeroTier and how to get it set up and configured on your CasaOS install. So here we are on the ZeroTier website, and it's just very straightforward, to the point as far as giving information about what they do. If we scroll down here a little bit, it says that it connects team members from anywhere in the world on any device. ZeroTier creates secure networks between on-premises, cloud, desktop, and mobile devices. And I've actually got this set up on my cell phone, my tablet, my laptop, my Synology server, my MB server, my Tiny Pilot. I've got all of these devices on my ZeroTier network. And what I want to do in this video is show how to get my CasaOS device set up on that same network so that I can access it remotely as well. So like it says here, ZeroTier combines the capabilities of a VPN and an SD-WAN, which is a software-defined wide area network, simplifying network management. Of course, enjoy flexibility while avoiding costly hardware vendor lock-in. And that is one of the things that I did want to mention here, is that ZeroTier does have a premium, an enterprise option that you can pay like $49 a month for to get some extra features. But for general access, you don't need to do that. You can use their free tier and have all of the access that you would need to your different devices, whether you're at home or away. So here we are on the hub.docker.com page for ZeroTier. This is their official Docker page for their Docker containers. That's why we're here. So if we look here at the tags page, we'll see that the OS and architecture that's supported by any of the tags that they have available is Linux/AMD 64, which means that we can't install this on a Raspberry Pi. Luckily, however, there was somebody else who goes by the developer name or group or whatever called zyclonite that recently has updated their ZeroTier Docker container. And if we come over to their tags, we can actually see that it should actually support all of our major platforms here. So this is what we're going to use to install ZeroTier on our CasaOS install. So if we go over to zyclonite's GitHub page, they do have a Docker Compose file here that was updated 6 months ago, but they have been keeping things updated. It's just that their Docker Compose file hasn't needed to be updated. They've just been updating other stuff in the background. So if we come in here and take a look, we're going to see that it is a version 3 Docker Compose, and our service is ZeroTier. Below that, we've got an image of zyclonite / ZeroTier. The container name will be ZeroTier 1. And this is where things are going to get a little bit dicey, a little bit different than we would normally do with a CasaOS container install. You know, normally we would go through the process of installing a container via the CasaOS dashboard, whether it's importing a JSON file or manually going through and typing in all of the different items for each of the different elements of the container install. Unfortunately, because there are some things in here that aren't part of CasaOS yet, we're actually going to have to do this in command line. Don't get freaked out by this. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to get connected, how to go in and install everything that we need to install to make sure that this works appropriately. So if we get past the devices that we were just talking about as far as something that we can't do via CasaOS at this point, next we've got network mode of host, we've got a volume, and we've got a couple of capability additions for netadmin and sysadmin so that it can handle networking and things like that to the full efficacy that we need for this container to run. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up our terminal emulator here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just drag this over. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and then I'm also going to change my profile because I don't like this color scheme by default, like so. And then let's make that a little bit bigger. So the first thing we want to do is actually connect to our Raspberry Pi. So what we'll do is we'll type in SSH, and it'll be Pi or whatever your username to log into your Pi is, and then we'll do @ and then the IP address of your CasaOS device. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And then it's going to ask me for a password. Now, this is because I've already connected to this device. If you haven't connected to the device via SSH in the past, you'll be prompted to say, hey, are you sure you trust this device? Type in yes, hit enter, and then you'll be good to go in the future and won't have to deal with that, just like I didn't have to deal with that here. So what I'm going to do, of course, is type in my password. And so if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I like to store my Docker containers in a specific folder. So we're actually going to navigate to that folder. We're going to do cd /home and enter. And then we'll do an ls. And here we can see that I've got a Docker folder and a Pi folder. Pi is for the Pi user home directory, but I've also got this Docker container, Docker folder that I want to get into here. So I'll do cd docker. And if I do an ls again, which is list screen, we've got AdGuard, Bookstack, and Nginx Proxy Manager from previous videos. So then what I want to do, let's try a sudo su maybe. Oops, nope. So let's just do a sudo mkdir for, so we're saying basically run this command as root. That's what sudo means, or super user do. Then we've got mkdir, which is make directory. I'm going to title this ZeroTier. And then we're going to cd into our ZeroTier folder, like so. And then there's nothing in there. So let's clear our screen. And then what we want to do next is we want to create a docker compose.yml file. So what we're going to do is nano, and then docker-compose.yml, and enter. And then now we've got this Docker Compose file here. What I want to do though is actually come back over to here and make sure that I still have that copied, like so. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in, like so. And then we've got all of that information in there that we saw on the GitHub page. So then we can go ahead and press Control-O, that is to save. And then it's saying, hey, we're going to write this to this particular file. Is that what you want to do? We're going to hit enter to say yes. Oh, you know what? I screwed that up. And then we're going to say no. I didn't run that as sudo. So let's do that again. I apologize. So I had to run that as sudo nano docker compose .yml, and then we can do a Control-O and an enter and a Control-X. So now we have our Docker Compose file. The next thing that we want to do is actually run a command called Docker Compose up. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Oops, we're going to run this as sudo again. Docker Compose up -d. Okay, so we don't have Docker Compose installed. So let's fix that before we move on to the rest of our install here. So what we're going to do to install Docker Compose is run just a few different commands here. So we're going to go ahead, let's copy that. Where are you? There you are. So what we're doing here is we are installing some different libraries and in order to make Docker Compose available to our system. So we've got the first command done. So let's go ahead and do the second one here. We're going to go ahead and paste. Okay. And then our third command here to get Docker Compose installed. All right. So let's go ahead now and install Docker Compose here. Okay, so now we should have Docker Compose installed. So let's do Docker Compose version. So we have Docker Compose version 1.29.2 installed here. What we want to do next is actually make sure that Docker Compose continues to run even if we reboot. So we're just going to add this to the system control. We're going to enable it in Docker. So we're going to go ahead and paste that. We'll enter. Okay, so now we have Docker Compose up and running. So let's clear our screen again here, and then let's do Docker Compose up-d and enter. Right, sudo docker compose up-d. So now we're pulling the container and everything that it needs. So now it looks like we have ZeroTier up and running. So let's clear our screen again. Let's actually go ahead and make this a little wider, like so. And let's close that down. And let's do a docker ps. Keep forgetting sudo here, man. There we go. Okay, so now we have we've got zyclonite ZeroTier up for 20. It was created 24 seconds ago. Its status is up for 23 seconds. So at that point, it should be good to go. So now that we have ZeroTier installed on our CasaOS device, let's head over to ZeroTier and take a look at the process of creating a ZeroTier SD-LAN. So what you'll want to do is come over here to either sign up or log in, depending on your particular setup here. So we're going to click on sign up. You've got some options. You can sign up with an email account, or you can do it with a Google account or a GitHub account or a Microsoft account. There are several different ways that you can do this. I'm going to use a Google account here. So here we are taking a look at our very first network, and across the top we can see that our network ID is listed here. This is something that you want to keep private. Basically, this is your access to your private network. So this is something that you would want to keep private to yourself, or only give it out to people who you want to be able to access your network. Now, what's cool about this is even if they have this ID, they still can't join your network unless you give them access to it. If they try to join your network, they will show up in your dashboard, but they won't have access to anything until you actually give them access to that network. And we'll take a look at that here in just a couple of moments. So below that, we've got a randomly generated network name here. You can change that if you want to. In fact, I encourage it. You can give it a description if you want to. If you want to have different networks set up for different things, you can absolutely do that. And of course, you could then name and describe each network appropriately for your needs, for your setup. Below that, we do have private and public access. I advise, for security reasons, to make this a private network that you have to manually go in and authorize anybody who tries to join your network. Otherwise, if you set it to public, it becomes a security nightmare, and I don't advise that at all. Below that, we've got some managed routes. We're just going to kind of skip over for right now. So below that, we've got this IPv4 auto assign, and you can actually pick what you want your IP addresses to look like on your ZeroTier network. I actually typically like to go for one of, I don't like to do the 192.168 because that always gets in my brain, because that's the way the rest of my networks are set up, and it's just, I like to do something a little different here. So let's do this one. We'll just pick that one. And what you can see is it actually added, or it changed the managed route up here. There is an advanced option here that you can click on. and you can kind of set your own stuff up here. But just to make this easy, we're going to use the easy mode here. Below that, there's some IPv6 stuff. If you really feel you need to do that, feel free. DNS, if you want to set up a custom DNS, you can do that here. Below that, we can manually add a member. So anytime somebody installs ZeroTier on their device, they will be given a node ID or I guess a node ID here, and you can just put that in there as a pre-authorization, so that if they give you that, you can add it, and then when they actually get around to adding themselves to that network, it should automatically authorize them to be on the network. And then below that, we've got this area that says no devices have joined this network. So that's what we're going to do next, is actually join this network. Okay, so that was how to create a network. Very simple, just click create a network and then just kind of make the modifications that you want as far as name, description, IP range, things like that. And then of course, public or private, however you want to configure that. And my first thought was, well, let's just join this network. But then I was like, but there's nothing else on this network, so that's not going to do us any good. So what I want to do is actually join my pre-existing network that I've got all of my other devices connected to. So let's go ahead and log out of this account. We'll log into my other account, and then we'll join that network. So here is my pre-existing network. This is the network that I've been using for a while now, really. So what I want to do is actually join this network. So here is the command that we're going to run in order to connect to a network. And we're going to kind of run through this. So again, sudo for super user do, run this as root. And then there's docker exec ZeroTier 1. It's basically saying, hey, we're going to connect to this container. And then inside that container, we're going to run the following command, which in this case is ZeroTier CLI join. And then we're going to put in a space, and then we're going to put in my network ID and click paste and hit enter. So now we have 200 join OK. So now in theory, if I go back to my other screen here that I had up in Chrome, and hit refresh, it looks like we have a new item right here that has nothing in it. So what I want to do is actually come back over to here. And then I just want to kind of come back here and type in status. And here we can see that what my ID here is. It's 8781540E71. And that's what we have right there. So I know that that is the correct device. Now, even though, like I mentioned earlier, I have joined the network, but I haven't authorized it. If we look right here under this first column, the authorization icon or checkbox has not been checked. So I don't have access to any of these devices, any of these other devices that are listed here. So the first thing I actually want to do here is give it a name. So I'm going to call this CasaOS. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click on the checkbox there. And we're just going to hang out for just a minute. And then we'll go ahead, and then here in a second, we'll refresh the page. In fact, you know what? I didn't even have to refresh it. Right there is my IP address. So what's cool about this is now I can take this IP address and I can open up a new tab and put that IP address in there and put port 90 on there, just like we would before. And right there is our CasaOS. So let me get logged in here. And right there is CasaOS on a different IP address. And if I come back over here, we can see that it's the exact same install, just on a different IP address. So the other thing that I can do now that I'm connected to that network is I can come over here and I can open up, say, a file folder. And let's go ahead and minimize this screen back here and that screen right there. And up here in my URL bar, I can type in SMB. And then, actually, you know what? I want this, and what I want to do is come back over to here, and I want to grab my, IP address from Jarvis. That is my Synology device that I have ZeroTier installed on here. So I'm going to go ahead and enter. And right there are all of my all of the different shared folders that I have on here. The other way I can access that is we can do, again, SMB 192.168.1.15 and hit enter. And right there, same thing. Both of these are now available on my network via either of these two different IPs. Of course, the local IP of 192.168. Whatever is my local IP address, whereas this 10.147.18.143 is my ZeroTier IP address. So I know I'm showing all of this on a local network, but this does actually work when you're remote, when you're away from your home. And again, what's great about this is you don't need to have any port forwarding. You don't need to have a domain name. You don't need to use, a VPN client that needs port forwarding and all of that sort of things. ZeroTier creates a tunnel between your, in this case, Docker container and all of your other devices. It creates a web network of all of those different things to make them accessible via a VPN style tunnel. Like it mentions here on ZeroTier's download page, and as I've kind of demonstrated and talked about, it is ZeroTier is supported on Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, Linux, FreeBSD, and NAS devices. So there's really nothing out there in the general realm of things that you can't put this on to give yourself remote access to one of your devices, or to give somebody else secure remote access to one of your devices, or to get remote access to somebody else's device, of course, if they allow you to, or if you allow them to. So this is just kind of a great way to have a more secure connection to your Docker containers remotely, again, without any port forwarding, without a domain name, without SSLs and all of those things. So with ZeroTier, you're kind of creating this VPN, SD-LAN hybrid thing that you get to control who connects to your network via the dashboard. So there is a ZeroTier Docker container that you can install, like I said, in Docker. I'm not sure if it's ARM compatible though, but there is an option to install a ZeroTier controller container. You will still need access to ZeroTier in order for this to work. This just kind of is an API interface to let you do everything on your local system, and then it pushes all of those settings up to the ZeroTier network to manage all of the nodes that way. But again, even with that, it's not acting as a control node. It's just acting as a remote dashboard for the remote node on ZeroTier. So guys, I hope you found this video helpful. There was a bunch of stuff that I had to cut out of here because I had to troubleshoot some things that I wasn't expecting to have to troubleshoot as I was going through this process. But I definitely think this is one of those setups that's worth using, even if it does require a third-party intervention, again, using ZeroTier to connect all of your different nodes on a software-defined wide area or local area network, so that you can connect all of your stuff securely and only have people you want on your network, unless you put it on public, which again, I don't advise. But I think ZeroTier is a great product. Again, I've been using it for a while. I've got it on all of my major devices, so that I can have access to whatever I need, whenever I need it. So guys, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, do me a favor, give the video a thumbs up. Really would help me out quite a bit. And if you're interested in this kind of content, hit the subscribe button down below. If you want to support the channel and get early access to my content, Patreon is a great way to do that. I used to have channel memberships and got rid of them, but Patreon is still an option where you can get early access and support the channel. So it's kind of a win-win situation there. I do want to give a big shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. It really does mean a lot to me. It really does help me do what I do with less stress going on to pay bills and do things like set up the new studio. Actually, pictures that are supposed to go right here, out for delivery today. I'm really excited about that. But I think with all of that said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. So as always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support. And I'll talk to you in the next video.